Hey everyone, you know there are about 900,000 known islands around the world. They are being formed by the movement of tectonic plates and lava flows from volcanoes, and some are even man-made. But no matter how they're formed, there are some truly weird islands out there. From islands used for nefarious purposes during times of war to islands holding strange mysteries from the past. So join me for today's video. We're going to count down the 15 most strange-looking islands. Number 15. Easter Island. Kicking off our list is one of the most famously mysterious islands on the planet, Easter Island. It's known for its giant stone statues, some of which are up to 3 stories tall. Easter Island is one big enigma. Just how exactly did the original inhabitants of Easter Island, whose only tools were stone, bone, and coral, manage to build these massive marvels? Historians have been asking this question since the 18th century, when the Dutch sea captain Jacob Roggeveen landed on the island on Easter Day, April 5, 1772. Linguists and archaeologists believe that Easter Island's first residents were Polynesians who arrived by canoe somewhere between 400 and 800 BC. After flourishing on the island and raising the population from less than 2,000 to about 9,000, the islanders undertook the massive monument building project that would make the island famous. On average, the statues, known as moai, are about 13 feet high and weigh 14 tons, all carved from rock quarried from a volcanic crater. Altogether, there are 887 of these moai on Easter Island, and while building these famous statues using such primitive tools is an amazing feat in itself, it still begs the question of how the islanders moved them. There are some theories floating around that the use of sleds and rolling logs, and some people believe they had the help of some ancient aliens. Chances are we will never know the full story. Number 14. Motu Island. Motu Island, also known as Fadiouth Island in the Maldives, is an amazing island in its own right during the day. But it's at night when things really start to come alive, literally, because the waters of this island are home to millions of these little bioluminescent plankton, meaning they're creating their own natural light. And if you visit Motu Island's beaches at night, you'll be treated to a sea of vibrant, bright blue unlike anything else in the world. It can look like an alien invasion or even like the stars are coming from the sea when this phenomenon happens. And of course, as the tides ebb and flow onto the beach, plenty of these bright blue plankton are left behind in the sand. Beachgoers can turn around to see all of their blue footprints they've left behind, and perhaps the best part is, it's 100% safe to go swimming amongst these bright aquatic lights. Motu Island is just 8 kilometers from the airport, and it's just a 15-minute boat ride away from the mainland, meaning you can experience this epic blue island anytime you want. Number 13. Floating Eye Island. Staring straight up into the sky, this Floating Eye Island sits in the middle of a swampy marsh in the Parana Delta of northeastern Argentina. According to scientists, it's existed since 2003. Almost geometrically perfect, it appears to float on its axis, surrounded by a tiny channel of clear and cold water. But such water proves unusual for the area. Unlike the contrasting swampy marshes, the bottom of the eye appears to be very hard. It's a strange-looking island indeed. At 387 feet in diameter, scientists have also observed the island leaning on various parts of the outer circle's wall through its rotational cycle. Because of this strange symmetry and physical features, many people are questioning the Island's origins. How could something so precise be natural? Of course, conspiracy theories abound, with some people believing it's a map for extraterrestrials and others saying that it's a secret military base. But no matter what you choose to believe, the fact that this island gently spins over time is pretty odd. Number 12. Cat Island. If you're ever in Japan anytime from December to April, then follow these instructions. Take the train from Sendai to Ishinomaki Station, hop on the bus to the ferry, and sail down to the Tashirajima Island. The island's home to only about 100 humans, all of whom are dangerously outnumbered by thousands of cats. The remote region of Japan is called the Ehime Prefecture, and the locals will tell you that they love their feline neighbors, and there are about 10 cats for each resident. Just how the hell did all these cats get there, especially if it's an island? It's not like they swam. Well, long ago cats were often kept aboard fishing vessels to help take care of any stowaway rodents, but somewhere along the line a few of them stayed behind on the island. They were left to their own devices, and they mated and created the perfect island for cat lovers. Cats are well looked after, and dogs are strictly prohibited from coming to the island for the sake of these feral felines. There's even a small shrine dedicated to a cat who was killed in the middle of the island. And as time has gone on, the cat population began to outweigh humans. In just 50 years, the human population of Tashirojima Island dropped from about 1,000 to less than 100, many of them sticking around to tend to the cats. But there's one bitter piece of irony when it comes to Tashirojima Island. Despite all the cats, cat food is tough to find on the island. Number 11. Fadiouth. Walking through Fadiouth, there's no such thing as walking around quietly. Every step you take is followed by a hefty crunch underfoot. That's because this island in Senegal is covered in clamshells to the point where you can't even see the ground below. Streets are literally covered in layer after layer, and the entire island is built on millions upon billions of shells that have accumulated over the generations. These shells are part of everything in the little island town, and they've been incorporated seamlessly into the architecture as well. While the streets paved in these little bivalves draw quite a crowd, the second shell island, connected to Fadiouth via a stilted wooden bridge, is the true gem in the area. It's known for its cemetery. The second island also is completely made out of shells, although its simple and barren landscape could easily be ignored. This island is in fact very special. 90% of people in Senegal adhere to Islam, yet the entire island attached to Fadiouth is dedicated to a cemetery of simple graves, marked by white Christian crosses. Also buried in shells, the cemetery is a strange monument to the minority religion of the nation and has adapted to the island's shell landscape to form a beautiful graveyard. But this is one place where it's safe to say there are far more shells than there are people. Number 10. Big Major Cay. Also known as Pig Beach, Big Major Cay is an island in the Bahamas that certainly lives up to its name, seeing as how pigs are the island's only inhabitants. But these pigs aren't rolling around in the mud or covered in their own filth. Nope, surprisingly, they're hanging out in the beach. And when they're not mulling around through the white sands or catching some Z's, they're going for a dip in the crystal clear water. These pigs love to swim, and it's a great way for them to keep cool. The Exuma pigs range from some piglets to the Big Mama, the largest pig on the beach. But how did these pigs actually end up on Big Major Cay? Well, no one really knows for sure, but some stories say sailors brought them there to be eaten at a later date. However, the sailors never returned. Most likely, the story is that the farmers of a nearby island brought the Exuma pigs over to keep them away from the smell. But however the hell they got there, anyone taking a boat to the Big Major Cay is in for one seriously cute surprise. Number 9. Fraser Island. There's no shortage of things in Australia that want to kill you. Venomous snakes, massive spiders, and even those giant cassowary things that travelers should be wary of. But don't think that just because you finally made it to the beach that you can relax, especially since you've laid your towel down on the beaches of Fraser Island. The waters here are incredibly rough, and rescue helicopters swooping in to save stranded travelers is an all too common occurrence here. And while it may be tempting to step into the clear, warm waters and test your luck against the undertow, you better remember that this is Australia and big hungry sharks are lying in wait. And if you manage to outswim the shark and beat the riptide, you can still get yourself tangled up in the tendrils of a nasty jellyfish. Even staying out of the water won't save you from Fraser Island because it's home to packs of wild dingoes that have no problem attacking any weary travelers. Oh, and the island has zero medical facilities whatsoever, so you better have that rescue chopper on speed dial. This place is awesome, but it's bad news. Number 8. Christmas Island. The next odd island on our list is sure to make your skin crawl. The red crab migration occurs once a year almost on cue, and when it happens you better make sure to get out of the way. It all goes down on Christmas Island in the Indian Ocean, where millions of these red crabs head to the ocean in hopes of finding a mate and getting lucky. But along the way, these little guys cover every inch of surface from trees to boulders and even the roads. It gets to the point where the floor is replaced by a waving sea of red shapes all clamoring over each other with just one thing on their mind. But the migration has become somewhat of an event, and if you can get a good and safe spot up high, you're more than welcome to watch them, because like a parade, the local municipality closes off roads so they can move along safely. The local news even gives would-be spectators live updates of the crabs' movements, so you'll know exactly where they are at all times. And while the idea of millions of crabs all moving to the ocean for the sake of love is kinda nice, it makes for one of the most goosebump-inducing sights in the world. And to add to that little bitty creep factor, the time of the migration and speed of the crabs are all determined by the phase of the moon. Number 7. Reunion Island. When you think of France, your mind probably immediately goes to Paris. The food, the wine, the Eiffel Tower, it's all great. But it's easy to forget that France also has some gorgeous beaches outside of the major cities. And so Reunion Island is a small island territory in the Indian Ocean that's only about 40 miles long. It may be small, but it's certainly well known by the locals. The water is a gorgeous shade of blue and the rocks look like a work of art. It's an incredibly picturesque landscape, but whatever you do, don't go in the water. Not only are the waters of Reunion Island known for their strength, crashing on these jagged rocks around the coast, the island's waters are also teeming with sharks. And not just a few, there are a lot of sharks. And the thing about them is that they know to hang out around the shallows where beachgoers are more likely to dip in their toes. The sharks are smart as a whip and they know where the good food is. There was a moment in time not very long ago when the sharks of Reunion Island were responsible for 16% of all the shark attacks in the world. Stay out of the water. Number 6. Taal Volcano. Why is a volcano on this list? Well, when it comes to Taal Volcano, there's much more than meets the eye. This is a complex volcano in the middle of Taal Lake, and it's often called an island within a lake. That's right, this is an island in a lake on an island in a lake, with 33 recorded eruptions. This volcano is the second most active volcano in the Philippines and part of the Pacific's Ring of Fire, a large area of the Pacific known for its earthquakes and active volcanoes. But despite the active seismic activity, this place is still pretty popular with tourists. Once at the Taal Lakeshore, travelers take a boat to reach the volcanic island, where they either hike up the hill or ride a horse. Once you make that 1,000-foot climb to the basin or caldera, you'll find the first lake. The caldera itself created a crater lake, the largest of its kind in the world. And at the center of this crater lake is a tiny island, Vulcan Point, which is one of Taal Volcano's cones, which is, again, one of the largest in the world. And while the area is one of the most unique places on Earth, beauty and intrigue come at a pretty steep price, as it's one of the most dangerous, having claimed many lives over the years. Number 5. Ramree Island. While the thought of a tropical island getaway may sound appealing, there are some places that you should just steer clear of. And while the soldiers who met their fate on Ramree Island may not have had much of a choice, the story is still a strange one. Ramree Island sits off the coast of Myanmar with an area of about 520 square miles. It's also the site of a famous battle during World War II, simply known as the Battle of Ramree Island. British troops fought the Imperial Japanese Army here, and as they realized they were quickly losing the battle, the Japanese troops retreated into the marsh, and that's where a grisly story begins. There have been multiple accounts, but all of them share the same key feature. The troops were eaten by the island's saltwater crocodiles. Some sources will tell you 980 men died, others will tell you just 10 men were eaten, and one will tell you 400. But no matter which one you choose to believe, the Guinness Book of World Records listed the incident as the greatest disaster ever suffered by humans from animals. No one but the crocs of Ramree Island will ever know the full truth. Number 4. The floating islands of Lake Titicaca. A man-made island isn't a new idea, and it certainly isn't always a great one. Like the world islands of Dubai, they can often destroy the local coral reef, which has a dynamic effect on the local marine life. But the floating island of Lake Titicaca is a little different. All 70 of these man-made islands are made entirely of totora reeds. All of these islands are inhabited by a Peruvian indigenous tribe, the Uros, which existence predates the Incas. They lived on these floating islands for centuries to stay protected from invaders. If a group like the Spanish conquistadors came too close, all the Uros people needed to do was to float their island homes away. It is truly an ingenious idea that remains impressive still in a world of skyscrapers racing to be the tallest in the world. While the Uros still hunt and forage amongst the floating reeds, much of their income relies on tourism, which can often be a double-edged sword. And although the Uros may have adopted certain modern amenities like solar panels, they're still able to maintain many aspects of their gorgeous and coveted culture. Number 3. Okunoshima Island. Better known as Rabbit Island, Japan's Okunoshima Island is easily one of the cutest places in the world. The name already isn't a dead giveaway. This is an island full of rabbits. But Okunoshima Island has a much darker history than you could possibly imagine. This tiny island was once home to a poison gas plant that made over 6 kilotons of mustard gas, which was sadly tested on animals. The island was both secluded and secret, making it the perfect place for such nefarious doings, with discretion being so important that it was removed from maps. But once the war was over, the gas was disposed of and the laboratory animals were set loose. And with no natural predators native to the island, they quickly spread, well, like rabbits. and now there are hundreds of these docile bunnies roaming around. In 1988, the two-room gas plant was converted into the Poison Gas Museum and opened to educate the local people about the role the island played during the Second World War. The island is also home to the Chusi Power Line Crossing, Japan's largest electricity pylon. The island's furry inhabitants are known for swarming visitors in the hopes of getting a free meal. But because the rabbits on Okunoshima Island are running rampant, there are no cats or dogs allowed on the island. Number 2. Sable Island. From above, Sable Island is one weird-looking place thanks to its unusually thin shape. But things get even more interesting when you step ashore. A low-lying stretch of land in the middle of the ocean, Sable Island is about 25 miles long and made entirely of sand. Due to the island's low profile and isolated placement, this oversized sandbar has a long history of shipwrecks, earning the island the moniker Graveyard of the Atlantic. But on top of the many shipwrecks, Sable Island is known for its population of some 400 feral horses that have lived there ever since they were introduced in the 18th century. These animals are exceptionally gorgeous because they're not cared for. Their long manes are allowed to grow and flow naturally in a way that you'll never see in a barn. The island has been relatively untouched by humans over the years, and that doesn't mean the occasional tourist doesn't happen upon this clandestine locale. Luckily though, the island and the hundreds of horses that call it home are protected by the Canadian government as a national park. Today, just a small group of scientists live on the island, studying the plants and animals, and many would-be visitors must actually clear their visit with the Canadian military. But horses aside, Sable Island has a very unique climate due to the different air streams and currents, and due to the constant blowing of cold saline winds along with sandy soil, trees aren't quite able to grow here. In fact, the only woody species to be found here are very stout wild roses and cranberries. Number 1. The Island of Socotra. The island of Socotra is part of an archipelago in Yemen in the Indian Ocean. It's so isolated that a third of the island's plant life doesn't exist anywhere else on the planet. But the biggest draw here in Socotra is the Adenium socotranum, better known as dragon's blood trees. They look more like giant mushrooms or flying saucers than they do trees, though, and as the name suggests, they're native to the island. The pink flowers blossom from the dragon's blood trees, and indigenous birds can be found perched on top of them, soaking up the sun. It's also not uncommon to find bats hanging from the trees during the day as they rest up before taking flight at night. The island was also isolated for millions of years, which allowed it to create its own interesting and unique ecosystem, unlike anywhere else on Earth. And to add to the mysticism of this place, in 2010, Russian archaeologists dug up the ruins of a 2nd century civilization, which many believe may be the Garden of Eden, meaning the gorgeous trees on the island could be what the fabled Tree of Knowledge is modeled after. I'll see you next time.
Watch our nature playlist for more top 15 videos about beautiful nature. Sit back, relax, and binge watch all of our best nature videos.